Discover the best-kept secrets from the leading entrepreneurs across the globe. Learn from the greatest minds in business with the MyCoda podcast. Here's your host, Sam Payne.
Hello and welcome to the show. Sam Payne here, guys, and I am speaking to you from a beautiful Friday morning here in the UK. The sun is shining, the skies are clear, there's frost on the ground, and it is a good day. And the day has got even better because of the guest I'm bringing on the show today, guys. We have got Mr. Tim Paige. Now, if you haven't heard of Tim, that's cool, not a problem with that, but you will be very familiar with the work he's done. Now, Tim is the lead conversion educator at Leadpages, and he also, guys, is the host of ConversionCast podcast, and he's also the founder of his own company, Tim Paige, where he initially helps people with the intros and outros on their podcast with voiceovers, but he also helps businesses and entrepreneurs grow their business via their podcast. He helps podcast hosts generate all the sort of traffic they're getting. He helps them generate all those leads into customers, okay, which is just incredible. So, guys, he's doing so much incredible work with hundreds of entrepreneurs, and he's helping thousands and thousands of people from all over the world through his ConversionCast podcast and the work he's doing with Leadpages. Also, I mean, Tim is an expert when it comes to webinars as well, guys. I mean, when we spoke to him, he'd done hundreds of webinars, hundreds of them, generating millions of dollars in revenue. I mean, it's just crazy how much business has been produced off the back of the webinars he's taken. So Tim's got a lot of strings to his bow, and not only has he got a lot of strings, he's very good at everything he does. So, guys, listen to what Tim has to say today, because not only, I mean, he's just genuinely a very nice bloke that just loves to help people, but two, he really does know what he's talking about, and he has generated some incredible results for his clients, for Leadpages, and for himself, practicing everything that he preaches in this interview, guys. So I'm going to stop talking now so we can get straight into this one. I know you're going to love this episode. Notepad and pen time, guys. You know what to do. Learn as much as you can from Tim, and I would encourage you at the end to get in contact with him because he's more than happy to help as many people as possible. So here we go, guys. This is the MyCoda podcast with Tim Paige. What's up, everybody? Sam Payne here, and welcome to the MyCoda podcast. Now, today's guest is Tim Paige. Tim is the founder of timthepage.com and makemyintro.com, where he provides voiceovers and intros for podcasts, including EntrepreneurOnFire and Foundr Magazine, plus a host of other leading names in the industry. Tim also does voiceovers for many well-known brands, including the UFC and the Jimmy Kimmel Show. Tim is also the host of ConversionCast podcast and senior conversion educator at Leadpages. Tim, how are we doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming on. I mean, you are clearly an expert in many fields that all the listeners are struggling in today. So I'm sure we're going to get a ton of value from this one.
Well, let's hope so.
Let's go for it. So we gave the listeners a good outline there, Tim, of what you're up to at the minute. But could you just fill the gaps and tell us a bit more about yourself and what it is you do?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm a husband and dad. I have a 3-year-old little boy and then another little boy on the way in about 6 weeks now as we're recording this. So it's coming up. Thank you. But as far as, what I do for work, you mentioned the voice acting stuff, which is a lot of fun. And probably what most folks listening to this are more interested in, which is the work I do at Leadpages. So I spend the majority of my time there hosting our podcast, ConversionCast, where we have folks come on and just share one marketing tactic and how that's working for them. I find there are a lot of shows out there that when it comes to marketing that give these high level concepts, but we wanted to give people that listen something that was like, what can I do in my business today after listening to this episode? How can I get, a customer today? How can I get a lead today? How can I improve my site's results today, as opposed to these concepts which I can use? So that's the idea behind ConversionCast. And then the rest of the time, I'm either speaking on stage at live events or hosting our webinars. I've now hosted over 750 webinars, live webinars, in the last 3 years.
Wow.
I have the unofficial Guinness World Record for the most live webinars in a 1 year period of time. So That's what I do.
Yeah, well, you're very busy.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's great. I get to do what I love all the time. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, do you know what? You touched on your podcast there, Conversion Cast, and that's one thing I loved about the show actually, because no episode really runs over 15 minutes. It's generally between the 7 and 10 minute mark. All your episodes. I mean, was this something you done purposely, or did it just happen this way after just getting a couple of golden nuggets and then leaving your guests?
It started out a little longer. It started out, I think 15, 20 minutes was the goal. And we had this, it was the same general idea, was that we wanted to share one tactic and the data behind it. But it ended up going a little long because we were asking these things like, well, what's next for you? Like, what's the next thing you're going to test? But really, it's useful to hear that, to like hear what people are doing, that it might be something we can try. But I just wanted to stick to what was working, what wasn't working, and sharing that data. So it was by design that it was shorter, but it's gotten shorter and shorter as time went on, just because, again, for me personally, just trying to keep a filter on myself, because I can drone on and on and on. And then also just as a fan of stuff like this, if it's entertainment, sure, go on forever. But if it's something that is supposed to give me actionable stuff, 45 minutes of stuff means that I'm probably going to take away very little from what I listen to. Again, if it's focused on something like this. Now, I do listen to some business podcasts, some marketing podcasts that are way longer and they're really valuable. But in general, if it's tactical, then I want it to be quick and dirty so I can go do it.
Absolutely. And it's funny because when I first started my podcast, I thought I'd love to do hour-long interviews. I went sort of down the Pat Flynn approach, because he just executes it like a badass, to be fair. He's got it nailed. Yeah. But after looking at the data, actually, I had one guest that come on about 6 episodes in who could only do half an hour. And the data from that show showed that I retained so many more listeners over that half an hour period than I did over the hour one. Yeah, so now, I mean, all my guests, the maximum I keep my guests on the show for it is 45 minutes, but generally, very rarely does it go that long. It's generally about half an hour. So it's funny. I just went off the data that come in, actually, because I thought everyone wanted an hour, but the shorter content seems to work, And
it's interesting too, because from a guest's standpoint, if you're looking to get somebody on, let's just say in my industry specifically, I'm looking for folks who are in the trenches doing marketing. And so that person doesn't have a whole lot of time to devote, especially when many of the times there's no direct benefit to that person. If somebody is, let's just say, the director of conversion for Target's e-commerce website, that person gets no benefit out of being featured on the podcast, right? Other than maybe, their brand gets awareness and, maybe he's not going or she's not going on a lot of podcasts. So it's kind of cool. And they could be like, I'm on this podcast. But in general, there's no direct, they're not getting some kind of financial result from it. So the point of that being that if I say, look, we're going to only need about 10 minutes and we're just going to share one thing that you're doing that's working and our audience will really appreciate it. You'll be providing value, but not taking away an hour of your day. That's a much easier sell than the hour-long podcast.
Absolutely. And that's another thing, because I've found, because we had a conversation before and you were saying I need to be off by past, and that's very cool. With the guys I'm interviewing, like John Lee Dumas, the second that we finished the interview, the phone went down. I was like, oh, right. He's gone. Like, time's precious for these guys, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly true.
I'd like to, we are going to delve into a lot about how you're helping people with conversions on their podcast, and I'd like to try and see if we can target it to people as well who don't specifically want to do podcasts but create a lot of content.
Sure.
But before we do, I'd like to get a little bit of history on you, Tim. Have you always been an entrepreneur, or have you ever had a normal job?
Everything I've done has been entrepreneurial in spirit. So straight out of high school, I spent a year in college, but just it wasn't for me. And then I went straight into a band. So I was a touring musician for about 7 years. And that is as in the trenches, entrepreneurial, dirty, down and dirty kind of sales and marketing as you could imagine. In order to eat and get gas to get to the next venue, we had to sell shirts and stickers and things. And if we didn't, we weren't eating that day, or maybe not even getting to the next venue without, I don't know, begging. I don't know. So so I learned a lot about that, and that was an era when there was Facebook, but it was much, much smaller.
Yeah.
You know, that was like MySpace was the big site.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it was a weird time in online marketing. So we were marketing ourselves that way, and I learned a lot from there. And then after that, I actually I opened a business selling high-end vacuums door to door. Just, you know, like your Kirby's and your Rainbows and Electroluxes and all that kind of stuff. But I did that for several years, and that's where I really cut my teeth with the psychology of what gets people to take action, what gets them to buy, what gets them to do the different things you want them to do. I wouldn't say that a lot of those same techniques have carried over, because I learned a lot about what I didn't want to do in that business, but I did learn a ton about the psychology of getting people to take action, and that has definitely been extremely helpful in the stuff that I'm doing with Leadpages.
And what was the band called, by the way?
Yeah, we were called Honor Bright.
The Honor Bright. Would we know it? Could I link it in the show notes?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I mean, we did TRL on MTV. We did the Warped Tour and Bamboozle and all sorts of South by Southwest and just a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah,
We had a great time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go, guest. The first guest on the listener. Sorry, he's the first guest on the MyCoda podcast who was in a band. So we can look forward to watching that one. So, I mean, you're clearly a leading authority when it comes to conversions. But what got you sort of big into this initially?
Yeah, it was actually, you mentioned Pat Flynn. When I was doing the vacuum sales stuff, I was working, 16-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week. And I would come home and sit on the couch with my wife, and, we'd be watching TV or whatever, and I'd just be drained. And we'd be sitting there, and she'd tell me about her day. And one day, we were watching TV, and I still to this day can't remember the show. I wish that I could remember, because Pat's a good friend of mine now, and I would love to share it with him. But this on the show, they said the words passive income. And I remember thinking, I don't know what that is, but I need to find out, because I have the complete opposite of that. I have the most active kind of income ever. So I Googled passive income, and as you could imagine, Pat's website came up. And I was just like, this is amazing. What is I listened to an episode of Smart Passive Income, the podcast, and it was one of the older ones that had Billy Murphy from Blue Fire Poker at the time. And I was like, this guy is making money hand over fist, basically selling people poker training, if I remember. And all I could think was like, I can do that. Not specifically the poker training thing, but I can do that. I can apply what I know about sales psychology into that world of online marketing and help people do something that they want to do. That's awesome. That's so doable. And so from there, I went nuts with Pat's stuff. I started reading everything Derek Halpern from Social Triggers put up. I started reading, really just going nuts into the world of online marketing and conversion optimization, and figuring out something that was interesting was that when it comes to offline sales, right, one-to-one sales, it's so stuck on that one person. It's so one-to-one. When it came to online marketing, you could do marketing that felt like it was one-to-one, but you could reach this huge, wide audience of people and have the opportunity to get a ton of sales and a ton of business while still keeping it a personal experience. And this is where I find many people make a mistake, is that they think because they're marketing to a whole lot of people that the messaging and the way that they treat those people should be as if it's to many people. Like, how often do you see marketing that seems like it's talking to a group as opposed to just talking to you? But the most effective marketing is directed at one person, the person reading. When you're, as an example, when you're talking to somebody on your podcast, it's not, hey, listeners. It's, hey, thank you for joining me. And it's not that different, but it speaks to the one person listening, because to them, it's an intensely personal experience. And that's how your marketing should be. And so when I learned that, I was like, if you have sales experience, it's so easy to translate that into marketing. because all it is finding a way to scale the one-on-one experience. And in doing that, I've learned so much of what I now share with our webinars and podcast.
That's incredible advice. That really is. And I mean, there'll be people listening into this now. They'll be thinking, okay, this is great advice, but how do I identify that person that I'm selling to? It's that avatar question, that illusional avatar that people are chasing, if you want to call them an avatar. So many different names for it now. But how can the guys listening today really try and pinpoint exactly who it is they're selling to?
Sure. I wish that I thought that there was some magical tactic, to figure it out. But when I'm trying to figure it out, I start with me to find out if I am my customer. Now, you're not always going to be your customer. And there are a lot of people out there that will say you should never be your customer, but I disagree. But, if you're your customer, start with you, and start with you before you were where you are now. Because a lot of times, I'll use the example of people who teach online business. A lot of times they've been doing it for a while and they forgot what it felt like to go, I'd like to start an online business, but I have no idea where to start. And so start with you where you were whenever wherever in the journey you want them to be. Now, for some people, you might be working with folks who already have some experience and you're trying to take them to the next level. So start with you where you were then and go with that person and talk to yourself then and go from there. Now, if you're not your customer, you're going to have to do some research or some guessing. It's kind of the two paths I often take. Sometimes you can just guess and you can go, here's what I think. And if that doesn't work, then you were wrong and go this other direction. But kind of the better path is go where your potential customers are, right? What business are you in? What are you talking to? So for example, if you're a health coach, get into some Facebook groups where people that are trying to improve their health are. Get into health and fitness groups. Get into some of the bigger nutritionist communities. Get in there and find out what people are talking about. Get into the yoga groups if you're into that. But Facebook groups are like my favorite thing. If you can find the right Facebook group for your audience, you can learn a ton just by reading the comments. That's my little quote unquote trick, is don't necessarily read the initial post, because so often the initial post is so thought out, and now not always, but it's that person's version of like thinking out what they want to say and making sure they frame it in a way that makes them look good. But in the comments, people get all heated and emotional. They've got their strong opinions and they want those opinions heard. So often that's where you're going to really learn what people's struggles are. You're going to learn what problems they're having. You're going to learn what they love and what they really hate, more often what they hate. But you're going to learn those things. And I would encourage you to not only absorb that information and use that in creating your quote unquote avatar, but also use that in the way that you speak to them, because you can take somebody's language and give it right back to them in that way. Somebody says, I'm so frustrated because every time I feel like I'm making progress, something happens in my life and I take 10 steps back. Well, then when you're creating something to get them to opt in, you say, you ever feel like you keep making progress and then something happens in your life and suddenly you've taken 10 steps back? Because that's what they're thinking. They've told you what they're thinking. And this is my favorite thing. Our CEO, Clay, taught me this. Whenever you're writing copy, give it the pillow talk test. And the pillow talk test is when somebody's lying awake at night, thinking about the problem that they have related to whatever you're going to help them with, whatever your product helps them with. What are they saying? So are they saying, would they say, if only I could blah, 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 I would feel blah, blah, blah. Because oftentimes we try to make these flashy headlines, but at the end of the day, all that matters is what's the problem and how will they feel if they had the solution.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great way to put it, because you can't really imagine someone laying in bed thinking, I wonder what the top 17 ways are to convert people from.
You got it. It's exactly right. But they might be thinking, if only I could find a way to get more customers without having to work 18-hour days. My business would be thriving and I could quit my day job or whatever that thing is, right? That's something that you could hear somebody say.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And on your site as well, I'm just looking at your about page now, and the first thing it says is podcasting can be fucking frustrating. Which, and I found myself saying that so many times. I read that, I was like, yeah, do you know what it can? Like,
Yeah.
I'm talking back to the screen, like.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's one of these things, and that's not something that I said initially, right? So you're on my website that the primary function is to we create intros and outros for people. But what kind of makes us special is that, you know, we've got a team that will write the copy for you. We find the music for you. We help you kind of get that initial messaging right. Whereas many people will just, I'm a voiceover and I'm going to do your intro. We focus on getting a result. But you know, initially we were just, we'll make an intro. You know, that was who we were. But we learned over time. We heard from people, gosh, you know, I want to work with you, but I just don't know what the script should be yet. So let me get back to you when I write the script. And they'd never come back. And so working with them and hearing that stuff, which I know sometimes you don't hear that, but we heard that feedback and we said, okay, what if we wrote the script? And that became, at first, it was just something we just did. Then we were like, well, hey, we're really separating ourselves from the competition. So let's make that part of our value prop. And then it was like, okay, great. We will write the script for you so you don't have to figure that out anymore. But then we started learning, people said, you know, oh, I'm so glad that you guys write the script because it's so effing frustrating to have to figure out what to do. And we're like, oh yeah, that's so effing frustrating. Done. And then I put the little meme there, which I think is hysterical. So yes, that was directly taken from what people had said to us.
No, I think it's great because, like I said, I found myself agreeing with the screen. Like, yeah, it is, yeah. Like, so it works. I mean, so if someone's listening in now and they're thinking, right, they've either got a podcast, it's been going for a while, or they're thinking of starting a podcast, what are some of the key ways they can start converting people from listeners to subscribers from their show?
Yeah, well, I'll give you the systemic approach, and then I'll give you some tactics. So the thing that I think is important to recognize is where your audience is when they're listening to your podcast, because you have to market from your podcast very differently from everything else. Oftentimes people will market from their podcast and think, well, I want more people to subscribe to the show, so I'll say subscribe, rate, and review. But the reality is lots and lots and lots and lots of testing has shown that people aren't going to subscribe, rate, and review to your podcast because you said to do it. And it has nothing to do with people not liking you or not liking your show. It all comes down to where people are when they're listening to your podcast. So if you think about it, many people are driving when they're listening to your show, and you want them to go into that clunky, ridiculous iTunes interface, go to your podcast, even if you give them a direct link, and then they get in there, and then they've got to find the thing, they've got to hit the 5 stars, they've got to hit the review, they've got to subscribe. It's a lot of stuff. If they're not driving, they're running. If they're not running, they're sitting at their work desk doing work things, right? So, you know, it's not often that somebody's just literally sitting there listening to your podcast waiting for a call to action. So we have to understand that experience and you know, react that way. We have to provide the easiest, most effective experience for that person. So the next thing to figure out is, what the heck do you want them to do? Now, I am still a firm believer that subscribe, rating, and review, those things are all good, but they're not priority number one. Priority number one, in most cases, again, in my opinion, is getting them on your list, getting them on your email list, because now you don't have to wait for them to come to you. Now you don't have to hope that they're going to open up the podcasts app, considering that there are many people that still maybe have just heard of podcasts and they just wanted to try it out. Maybe your show was the first one they found and they downloaded it and then they forgot all about podcasts, right? So we don't want to wait for them to come to us. Let's go to them. So get them to join your email list. My favorite way is we use a Leadpages feature called Lead Digits. So it allows you to say, hey, I've got this free ebook for you, you know, just for you for listening to this podcast. So just text free ebook to 33444 or whatever your thing is, right? And then when that person does that, they get a text back that says, great. What email address should we send the ebook to? So they send a text with their email address and they're added to your email list. Yeah. That's my favorite. Now, if you don't have Leadpages, you know, you could always send them to a website, but make it specific. Don't just say, go to mypodcastwebsite.com and subscribe to our mailing list, because again, you have to cut through all the noise of whatever's happening in their life at that point. Like, what are they doing? They're driving. So they're going to remember your website address, 20 minutes when they get to where they're supposed to be, and then go there and then remember to find the subscribe. No. Instead, make it so enticing that there's no reason for them not to, that they have to remember, that it becomes something critical to them. So if you're doing an episode, you're a health coach, and let's say you're talking about superfoods and the importance and the value of superfoods. Well, maybe somewhere in the episode you go, by the way, I want to get you started quick and easy. I don't want you to have to run to the store and buy some superfoods cookbook. So just text superfoods to 33444 and I'll send you 5 recipes, 5 of my favorite recipes that include the superfoods we've been talking about today. So you can get started right away. See, it's enticing. If somebody's listening to an episode about superfoods, they want those recipes. So they're going to remember that even if they don't do it right then and there. And if they don't remember the specific stuff, they'll go back and listen because it's worth it to them. But just subscribing for updates isn't worth it. So I would say that would be the big thing, is focus on that. The other thing is, if you're a little bit more advanced with your online business, and I don't mean super advanced, but I mean, if maybe you've got your product going, you're kind of rolling along a little bit, start doing webinars. Because then you can invite people from your podcast to register for a webinar. This has been the most effective way that we've grown our business from the podcast, because we found that 65% of the people that join a webinar after listening to a podcast will end up buying Leadpages. Wow. And of those people, the average dollar amount, they will buy for an average dollar amount of $68 higher than people who buy something that don't listen to the podcast first. So it's a really beautiful way to give them an experience that makes sense. They're listening to your podcast because they like you, your presentation style, they like who you are, they like your message. And then you say, hey, get on with me live on a webinar where I'll show you X, Y, and Z. You can ask your questions. We'll get a chance to hang out together. That's a natural next step for them. And then when you say, hey, hope this was valuable, let's take it further, here's my product, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah. So what you're talking about there is, because a lot of people do actually try and utilize just that general subscribe to my list and send them to their just generic list where all their content goes from. But what you're saying is making the content, the call to action specific to that content in that episode, right?
Yeah, exactly. Make it so that if they're listening to that episode, that's a topic they're interested in. Otherwise, they wouldn't listen to it. So make the thing that you're getting them to opt in for, make it specific to that topic, because that way that's something they're interested in.
That's awesome advice. And I'd love to talk about your views on giveaways as well, because I mean, I've heard a lot of advice about giving your best content for free. I've also heard a lot of people say, don't give your best content for free because you want to give them something to sort of an upgrade of content when they start subscribing to you or they start becoming a customer. I mean, I interviewed Neil Patel and he spent $30,000 on a free giveaway, which is a lot more than what other people would. So there's so many different views on what people can do for giveaways, especially for people who are doing podcasts as a side hustle, for example, and they haven't really got the time to fully commit to putting ebooks together for every episode and stuff like that. So what sort of giveaways can people use from the very basic up to like almost webinar level giveaways, and what does work the best?
Well, I want to make one thing very clear, that high value content does not have to mean high quantity content. In fact, it's often the opposite, like we were talking about earlier, right? So if you don't have a lot of time, I'm not asking you to create an ebook for each episode, but maybe a 1-page checklist, maybe a little worksheet. And it might take you an extra 30 minutes, but it provides a lot of value to the end user because the person then gets that and is more likely to accomplish their goal. So keep that in mind, when you're thinking about what to create. And I am in the camp of the more value you can provide, the better. If you look at our website, the Leadpages website, we just give away the farm. We have a membership site, a multiple $1,000s worth of a membership site of free information available on a page, including like 23 hours of videos on all these various different things, and you just get it for free. You don't even have to opt in to get it, right? So we're big fans of giving away stuff. Yes, we have a big team now, so it makes it easier, but that said, yes, give away lots of stuff, but make it serve a purpose. And that's where, you were asking about like webinars, checklists, mind maps, worksheets. Those things are all great, but make them serve a purpose. Only create them and offer them if it's a problem that you believe your audience to have, and it offers a clear path to not only solving or, reducing that problem, but also after that, they see you as the person they need to go to, so that when you make your sales offer, they go, wow, if the free stuff was that good, I can't wait to see what's in the paid stuff.
This is no-brainer, literally.
Exactly.
So, Tim, before we wrap this up, just thank you for coming on, because you did drop a lot of golden nuggets there for everyone. So we really appreciate your time. Now, before we let you go today, could you just give us one last piece of advice, your final parting words of wisdom for the guys who are listening today?
Sure. It's good timing because we had converted our conference last week. And I think my biggest takeaway was just reminding me the importance of real relationships. We spent, listen, I'm all about optimizing a website. I'm all about doing what you can to get more business and build it. But at the end of the day, the thing that's had the most profound impact on my results in my own life and my business results have been the relationships that I built, not relationships built for the sake of business success or for the sake of accomplishing something, but purely in the interest of building real relationships and connecting with people on a human level. Doing that has not only taught me how to do that in marketing, but also it's enriched my life because, now these people who I once looked up to, now these people that I had no idea were gonna go on to do these amazing things are people that are my friends simply because I cared more about being their friend than I did about getting something from them, and they to me. So it was the same thing. So I would say focus on the value of your relationships and not as much on the value of your business.
I love that. And finally, where is the best place for people to find you online, and how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so best place would be to register for one of our webinars, which you can access at leadpageswebinar.com, or reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Tim the Page, and I'll be happy to help you out as best I can.
Awesome. Tim, thank you so much for coming on today. Like I said before, you gave so much value there, my friend, so I really appreciate your time. And good luck with everything you're doing with Leadpages and timthepage.com and makemyintro.com and everything else you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, guys, and there it is. I hope you enjoyed that one. And Tim, massive thanks for coming on today, mate. It was an incredible show and an absolute pleasure interviewing you. So just, guys, listen to what Tim was saying there. Think about how much value he gave away in that show alone. And this is stuff that he would be paying, that a lot of clients would pay for. I mean, I've had mentors, consultants that I've paid for their time, and they've given me advice that isn't as clear as that, as clear as, exactly what my end goal is and how I can achieve that, and the call to actions I can put in place to find exactly what I need to be getting off the back of the interview, i.e. a new subscriber, someone I can get into my funnel, or potentially a customer. And little knowledge bombs that Tim drops throughout that interview, guys, were just invaluable. So if you have to, and I implore you to do it, listen back to that one and just take as much as you can from it, because, I mean, the stuff that Tim went through there is stuff that he's actually implementing in his businesses himself and helping other people implement in their businesses, and it's working. It is working every single time. Now, true to form, guys, we have got a giveaway for you at the end of this one. If you are interested in setting up your podcast, there are a lot of things that go into actually doing this. So the giveaway is it's an introduction to podcasting that I've done on another podcast, funny enough, because that's how you guys will be listening to content via a podcast. But I just basically outline how to start your podcast. And it's because it's an audio, it's mainly based around stuff you need to take in consideration, like how to establish what your end goal is, how to make sure you're doing everything you can to achieve that end goal, how to set certain systems up, how to take in consideration, how to link softwares up, how to put together show notes, how to approach influencers, how to get people on your show if you're interviewing. Like, all this stuff that people don't really think about when they first go into it. They think, I'm going to launch a podcast, but they don't think about the nitty gritty and the stuff you need to do in the foundation phase, as I call it, the work that you need to put in to make sure that you launch successfully. So, guys, this is a really good episode. I think it's just over an hour long, but it just highlights exactly what you need to do to identify who your audience is, where they are, what their problems are, and how you're going to communicate that to them. And then it goes into the depths of a few technical bits, guys, but nothing crazy on that. This is more just about approaching influencers, finding influencers in certain niches, how to get them on your shows, and just basically how to get your show off the ground successfully. So, guys, I implore you to go and listen to that. And then off the back of that, guys, if you've still got everything in place and you want to go and set up your own podcast, I will be launching a podcast course. Okay, that is coming soon. The content is being worked on, and you can chuck your name down and pre-register for that. Now, anyone that pre-registers for that course will get access to that course for free. Okay, so if you want to get into that course and find out what it's all about once we're live, guys, jump on that mailing list. Now, if you don't jump on that mailing list and the course goes live, then the course is going to be over £100 to just get into it. Okay, I'm not sure what the end figure is going to be quite yet, but I know it's going to be over £100. But guys, I know one thing for sure, and that's if you jump on that list, then you'll get in that course for free for the rest of your life. Okay, so I can't give you much more than that. So there it is, guys. The link for that intro to podcasting session is in the show notes below. It's the mycoda.net session-023. Guys, thank you for listening today. I hope you enjoyed that show, and I hope you have a fantastic week. I'll see you next time on the MyCoda podcast.